Okay, this video is going to be about demographic transition models. And so what is a demographic transition model? First up, it looks at three different things on a graph, right? It's going to look at the birth rate. If I can bring up my stylus. So it's going to look at birth rate, death rate, and total population of different countries. And it's really looking at economic development, and it's leading to industrial societies, changing from primitive or pre-industrial societies to industrial societies, and how that's going to affect the population. So when we look at the graph here in a second, you're going to see that there are 4 stages that we'll talk about. We'll talk about the 5th stage later, and we'll talk about this question mark, what it means. But there are going to be 4 stages, or I think they call them phases in the graph, that we're going to look at. But the first is a pre-industrial society, right? So this means you could think of it like primitive, maybe a native culture, somebody without much technology. The next is stage 2, or phase 2, which is a developing country. These are going to be poor countries that are developing. Next would be urbanization, which means you're leading more towards cities. People are moving more towards cities and becoming more technologically advanced. And the last we'll look at is developed countries. All right, so let's look at our model. Here's the graph, right? And first thing that you do, right, you notice the axes. The first one down here, going from left to right, is time. So this will be over time, right, as countries develop. So development. Let's see if I can get a smaller stylus really quick. So smaller development, this shows development over time. And then you notice on the y-axis, it's births and deaths per 1,000 per year, right? So let's look at these 3 lines that you see on the chart. The 3 lines up here are, number 1, this green line is birth rate, right? So number of children born per 1,000 per year. This purple line down here is death rate, so the number of people dying. And then total population is the red line here. And then here are the different 4 stages that we discussed, and we'll talk about the 5th one later. Okay, so let's start talking about what the graph shows. In phase 1, pre-industrial societies, right? You see, number 1, total population is very low. It's stable. It goes up and down a little bit, but it's pretty stable. You've got births. They go up and down, but quite high. So high birth rate and also high death rate, but the death rate is pretty stable, right? So the natural rate of increase is pretty slow. It doesn't move up very much. It goes up and down, and it's pretty stable, right? So high death rate, high birth rate, slow increase of total population. Phase 2, right? We're looking at developing countries. So poor countries that are advancing, right? They're getting more medical care, better hygiene, better resources. So what happens? You see a dramatic decrease in the death rate. You see a very rapid increase in the total population, right? But birth rate stays high. So death rate falls dramatically. Birth rate stays high. Rate of natural increase, which is the total population, is a rapid increase, right? Again, why is this happening? Better medical care, right? People are living longer. Fewer children are dying, right? Like over here, this could be from children dying from disease or some type of epidemic, right? And so deaths are going down, people are living longer, but still having quite a few children. All right, next stage that we'll look at is stage 3, and that is urbanization, right? So as they move from a developing country to a more urban society, right? Let's look what happens. The birth rate, it starts to fall dramatically. Death rate slows, so it's not as fast. It's not decreasing as fast. So it's low and steady. Birth rate dropping dramatically. Population increases still, but towards the end it becomes leveled off and stabilized, right? So it could be a slow and then stable growth. Low death rate, low birth rate, increase of population, but slow and steady. So what's happening here, right? Again, people are using family planning. They have better health. Women are becoming more independent, they're working, so they're not having as many children, later marriages, all those things that we've discussed in class. All right, and the last section over here, phase 4, or a developed society, right? What's happening? Now the birth rate, just like over here, it goes up and down, but it's pretty stably low, right? A very low birth rate. Also a very low death rate, right? So total population or natural increase is slow, possibly a little bit of decline, right? You start to see possibly a little bit of decline, but it's stable. Okay, let's look at what this would look like, what this graph would look like if we used population pyramids, right? So let's look at these. Here's the population pyramid for phase 1, stage 1, same thing, right? Pre-industrial societies, we said high birth rate but high death rate. So you've got a lot of children down here, but people don't live as long, so steep slope on the graph on both sides, male and female, right? People are not living as long, they're not reaching as older. You're going to die early, probably in your 40s, 50s. Very few people would reach the top, so it's a very sloping line. Stage 2, developing countries, high birth rate still, dramatic decrease in death rate, and rapid increase of population. So what's going to happen? Again, we see lots of children, but people are beginning to live longer. So you have a wider section in the middle, right? More people are living to a longer age. Stage or phase 3, what's happening here? There's still increase, right? It's slowing down, especially over here. It's stabilizing. It's increasing but stabilizing. Birth rate drops dramatically. Death rate is low and steady, right? So natural increase, slow and steady. Let's look at the graph. What's happening here? You've got lots of children, but now you're expanding more in the middle. Right here you're expanding more, right? So death rate, people are living longer up into the later years. It's becoming much broader here in the middle section. Still quite a few children at the bottom. Okay, phase 4, in a developed society. Right now you're going to look more like a cup. This would be more of a box, right? This would be the Christmas tree. And this is going to be the cup. Right? So what's happening here? Again, birth rate low. There is some fluctuation, but it's a low, pretty steady. Death rate very low and steady, right? And total population then stabilizes, but towards the end, maybe there might be some drop-off, right? In stage 4, but fairly stable. Slow increase maybe, right? So now we've filled out here, but let's look at the children down here. What's happening? It's indented. So what does that mean? There's fewer children being born, right? So it's filling out, and you see the top level now compared to over here in these two, much bigger up top. More people are living longer. Okay, stage 5, let's look at that. Let's talk about that now. Stage 5, we're not really sure what could happen, right? One of the criticisms we'll talk about in a second is that this is not a predictive. This describes what happens in societies, but you can't use it to predict what will happen, right? So possibly there could be a decline in the total population, right? If the birth rate stays low, death rate high, then we know that because there are fewer children born, population could drop. But maybe the actions that the government takes to counteract stage 4 could succeed, so you could see an increase possibly of population, right? So either one of those two things could happen. Let's look at this graph down here for stage 5. What does this mean, right? So you see fluctuation in population. You've got a large amount here of children, and you've got a large amount here in older, maybe older middle, the middle of the economically active, but you have this dip. What could it mean? It could be possibly related to stage 4, or it also could be some type of catastrophe, like a war, right? Where a large portion of the population died. The men that went off to battle are usually generally of the same age, right? So that means that this section would all be shorter, or it could be a natural disaster. We're not sure, but that's what it could look like, okay? And last, let's look at the criticisms. One of the criticisms, and it's related to this point down here also, is that it's not applicable to all countries, right? This is based on a Western model, Western countries, Western Europe especially. And it might not work for all countries, especially poor countries, right? They might continue to have children even though they've moved into a developed stage, right? It's, again, descriptive. It only describes, it cannot be used to predict the future, right? And also that, you know, the world is more complicated than just economics and driving development. There could be other things, like we said, possibly like in the previous graph in stage 5. In this one, there could be wars or natural disasters, things like that. That could cause a dip in population. But this is a demographic transitional models.